Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark Tech. I hope I'm going about live. This will happen every time until the end of time. Me and fighting with OBS. Now, we went to regularly scheduled program for a while nowadays. We didn't talk as much about LTT drama and stuff like that. We talked about PlayStation hardware recently with the PlayStation Portal, the Pulse stuff, and things like that. We obviously have been talking a lot about iPhone, but now we are talking about something very, very non-interesting in the traditional sense, but something a little more egregious. Let me just very quickly switch my screen here. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and you cannot see that obviously here because Sony is trying to obfuscate those news, but PlayStation Plus prices are going up, and they are going up significantly. The annual prices are going up by about a third. So, but obviously Sony is trying to keep that on the down low. We can go right here, right? So we have like the 12-month subscription plans going up to $80 for PlayStation Plus Essential. That's up from 60. The PlayStation Plus extra pricing going from $100 to $135. And the 12-month subscription for PlayStation Plus Premium going up from $120 to $160. So yes, this is a 33.333% increase. This is basically a clear 35% increase, and this is also a third increase. So this has actually gone up the most in terms of percentage, but the overall increase is still big. Now, I am talking about this because, as I've said several times, this channel is devoted to Apple stuff, PlayStation stuff primarily, but I will cover anything in the world of tech. This obviously has a lot to do with PlayStation, and this is something that will hit consumers by all means. And I will try to contextualize those price increases. I will be mostly very negative about those. Even in the realm of price increases, I think this could have been done far, far better. But yeah, let's start this. First of all, cheers. Not forgetting to mute as I drink. Silicon Magic, I see you're already here. I'm so happy that I'm not a fan. I hate to be outraged. Well, to be quite honest, I personally am not outraged for myself. My PlayStation Plus premium subscription is validated until, and please hold on to your butts, until November of 2026. So I have more than 3 years left in my subscription. This will not hit me for a while. And by late 2026, my finances will be entirely different than what they are right now. $20, $30 to $40 extra per year will not hit me hard. Also, I always purchase stuff on discounts. Most of my regular PlayStation Plus subscriptions I purchased for €45 instead of 60, and now my PlayStation Plus Premium stuff I purchased basically on top of my regular PlayStation Plus stuff, because I used to have PlayStation Now, so those two were intertwined. But yeah, I believe I got the last year for like the last time I added another year, I believe I paid €100 €100 instead of 120 for PlayStation Plus Premium, going from 2025 to 2026. So yeah, this is not hitting me hard. The reason why I'm outraged is because there are people that are dependent on this, and I am fully actually on board with some kind of price increases in the long term. I have not been critical about Xbox increasing their prices. Sorry, my TV for some reason turned itself on. Like by $1 or something like that. I believe it's like $2 for PlayStation, for Xbox. What is it called? It's Game Pass Premium or something, or somebody wants to connect to my Apple TV from some other apartment. Nope, you cannot do that. That was surprising. Yeah, so Silicon Magic, I don't think you need to be a fan to be outraged about this, because even in terms of price increases, I, for example, been very understanding of the price increase from $60 to $70 when it comes to proper AAA games. And I think the games that I have mostly purchased at that full price have been very, very good and very much worth that, especially when you consider, yeah, it's Game Pass Ultimate. Thank you, Silicon Magic. As you guys know, I'm not an Xbox user. The only time I've used actually Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is when I used cloud streaming for a little bit to test it out. I've never been super happy with it, so I didn't keep the subscription. But yeah, Ultimate, I should have still known that, because obviously I used it for a while. But let's go through what Sony is doing and how they're doing this. Silicon Magic, you're saying your brothers might be angry about this. Well, I think anybody who has a PlayStation, I don't know anybody who doesn't have at least like the basic, the PlayStation Plus Essential tier. So, and that is going up quite a lot as well. So let's get to it. First of all, Sony's obfuscating those news, by the way. They're covering like the PlayStation Plus monthly games for September. Those are not the greatest games, but it's definitely, by the way, like PlayStation Plus Essential is leagues and like just light years ahead of what we got with Xbox Live Gold and what we now have with that super cheap Game Pass tier that is like replacing Gold. Games with gold or whatever. All those names are stupid. I will be the first one to say that the way Sony names their tiers is like stupidity personified. I'm a big fan of the PlayStation. I'm a big fan of like a lot of what some of those subscription services have to offer, but I hate their names. Silicon Magic, you're saying you are not, I assume you're saying not into online games. Well, I've actually subscribed to like what was previously just like PlayStation Plus and is now PlayStation Plus Essential for $60. I've actually subscribed to that before for one, I'm not into online games either. But I've subscribed for that just for the monthly games. When I got originally into PlayStation, I did not have much of like, I wasn't very media savvy in terms of what games are coming out and stuff like that. I didn't invest too much time thinking about it. So I just relied on like me getting some of the bigger AAA games out there, and those are still the games that I mostly play. And then I try out stuff that is in PlayStation Plus, and I think that both the Essential tier and now also, of course, Extra, and those things have helped me grow my understanding of gaming. I think the selections have been mostly quite good. There have obviously been like very bad months and sometimes very good ones. But yeah, obviously you don't have to have it, but I think it doesn't hurt. I think it just makes the experience overall a little better when it comes to the PlayStation and of course Xbox. Like I cannot imagine having an Xbox and not having Game Pass at that point. So the games that we have for this month are Saints Row, Black Desert, the Traveler Edition, and Generation Zero. Ironically, I could only tell you something about Saints Row, even not from myself, but from the media coverage that I've seen about it. Have not played Black Desert, have not played Generation Zero. Is Generation Zero like a mecha game? Are they kind of like doubling down on Armored Core 6 coming out? So those games will be available from September the 5th until October the 2nd. Obviously, this is the much aligned like reboot of Saints Row, so yikes. Black Desert is an open world fantasy MMORPG. Well, good for it. And Generation Zero is a first-person open-world adventure set in the familiar but hostile open world of 1980s Sweden. Battle and survive deadly machine enemies alone or with 3 friends. So a lot of co-op stuff this month. I mean, good for them, I guess. But yeah, I'm not very into what they're offering. And for anybody who hasn't yet downloaded, this is like the obligatory, like the Mystic Ryan thing, always reminding us. You have until Monday, September 4th to add PGA Tour 2K23, Dreams, and Death Store to their game library, which is in my opinion a far better month just for having Dreams. But obviously there is this much bigger news that is for some reason hidden underneath the other news. Who could guess why? I don't know. Why would that ever happen? I assume that's kind of an accident. But yeah, the price increase. Let us get into the juicy stuff. We also wanted to let you know that starting September 6th, we'll be increasing the price for a PlayStation Plus 12-month subscription globally across all benefit plans. It's interesting that this is for the 12-month plan, because there's always been a big discrepancy between like the 1-month plan, the 3-month plan, and then the 12-month plan is like really this objectively much better deal. I assume that Sony might have thought that more people would be subscribing on like a monthly or 3-month basis, and now they're basically like backpedaling and increasing the prices for just the 12-month subscription version so that they could still get that kind of money that they expected to get from some monthly subscribers, some 3-month subscribers. Maybe they thought more people would like subscribe for a month and then forget it, and in perpetuity like pay them egregious amounts of money. But yeah, this basically puts the 12-month pricing much more in line per month with the 1-month and 3-month plans. Still technically a better deal, right? Of course it needs to be, but it is what it is now, right? I always say that it's definitely worse. The price adjustments will enable us to continue bringing high quality games and value added benefits to your PS Plus subscription service. Now, that is absolutely corporate talk. Now, don't get me wrong. I fully understand that licensing games costs money. I fully understand that subscriptions are like siphoning some revenue away from their full game purchases. I don't even mean like just day one, but I mean like games that potentially could sell still like a few hundred copies every month, or a few thousand copies even like a year or 2 years into them being on the market. Just look at stuff like The Witcher, for example, or the GTA games and stuff like that. There's a reason why those games do not hit subscription services as reliably as smaller games or less successful games. It has everything to do with those games still being very successful years down the line. And like Red Dead Redemption recently like hit another record in terms of like in what tier it is, like in the top 10 or 15 in terms of game sales, which is insane. Like nothing happened. They didn't even give it a PS5 like kind of remaster, and the PS4 version of the original Red Dead that came out, yes, it boosted Red Dead 2's sales, but that was a terrible port by modern standards. So yeah, like consumers just keep buying shit regardless of what's happening. And of course subscription services will take away from that. People will play what is in the subscription service, especially if the subscription service is somewhat expensive. People will wait for games to come into the subscription service, especially first party games. And this is now happening without Sony ever committing with one word to putting first party games onto subscription services like day one or like just even a year after, right? Sony could say, with those new price increases, we are now committing that all our PlayStation Plus all our PlayStation Studios first party games will come out a year after launch onto PlayStation Plus Extra. I don't think they need to do this, right? But that would have more than justified the price increase, especially for PS Plus Extra, and then they could have made some bullshit up for PS Plus Essential and Premium and stuff like that. There are numerous ways that they could have justified that price increase, but they're just choosing to do a price increase. They're not doing anything, even with corporate speak, to justify it. What they're currently saying is like, what they're currently saying, the price adjustment will enable us to continue bringing high quality games and value added benefits to PS Plus subscription services. That is not the point. They are more than capable of doing that with $60, $100, $120. This will increase profit for them. That is the absolute priority here. And for as much as I have said, I agree with the $60 to $70 price hike for AAA games. I even was tolerant of the price increase for the PlayStation 5 hardware in Europe while the inflation was at its highest. And of course other regions as well, but the US wasn't impacted. And the reason why I'm so not happy about this is because I don't think Sony is doing anything to truly justify it, even though I think the potential justifications could have been really, really easy to integrate. Now, let's get back to it once again, right? What are we talking about? Well, the PlayStation Plus Essential 12-month subscription goes from $60 to $80. In euro, it's now 72 euros, so it's better in euro. It's now 60 British pounds, and it's 6,800 yen. The prices line up pretty well, especially it's better than whenever euro and like US dollar is like 1-to-1, and it's definitely a pretty favorable conversion to pounds right now. So I don't think those regions have as much to complain. Just for context, I would say I am obviously not an expert in yen pricing, right? But $80 is more than the full price game in the US, where it's $70. But 72 euro is actually 10% less than a full price game, because here they cost 80 euro. So that's kind of interesting. I think Sony knows that the US can basically afford more currently because of an overall better economy, so they're hitting these markets comparatively less hard. Alexander, I'm always joining your streams like 5 minutes before. No, you're not joining me 5 minutes before the end. We're only 15 minutes into it, and I still have a lot of rage to share with you guys. I know it's been kind of wacky when I'm doing my streams. I wish I could commit to a clear like schedule, but obviously I'm still trying to live my regular life. And as I've noted before, like I've had some like family issues that I needed to go through that basically have been mostly resolved today, so I'm in a pretty good mood. But yeah, you definitely will catch something, Alexander, here in terms of content, not some disease or something. Alexander, I've always stuck with PC, so I'm not familiar with these kinds of services, but seems like at least the essential tier should be included when you buy the console. No, Alexander. The point with subscription services on console is, for one, I've always advocated for a lesser need for any subscription service. In the sense that I don't think that online like multiplayer stuff and things like that should cost any money. I think for most part those are services anyway controlled like by the game companies that make those games and stuff like that. So I don't think that Sony should be charging you. I know Sony like helps out, they invest overall in the infrastructure, but the entire point with consoles is that consoles are sold at a very low margin or sometimes at a loss. I am perfectly fine with having some kind of subscription service to make up for this. However, the price increase to $80 here is kind of substantial. Silicon Magic, 80, haven't bought a full price game for a long run. We're already there. Yeah, it's 80 euro here. So it's substantially more than the US price here. It's kind of a big discussion point always. Are subscriptions justified? In my opinion, they're justified. I think the exact way in which we get them is not a super fair one, but I still understand, especially by the way for Microsoft, it loses like sometimes hundreds of dollars per current console. Sony like said a while ago that like the PlayStation Plus Disc Edition became like profitable, but now they're selling it with like a $60 discount. So Alexander, you are also agreeing that modern consoles are cheap for what they are. Exactly, that is the context here, and I don't think that you can rationalize it away. When you actually look at like PlayStation's historic profits, they're actually not really high. They hit like a really good point during the pandemic because they were able to still like get all the PlayStation Plus users and stuff and regular game buyers across PS4 and now PS5 to pay in. But I think anybody looks at now how they're doing currently, they're not nickel and diming you. They really needed that $70 price increase so their business had any kind of growth in this difficult environment. And when you look at comparatively to inflation, they're really down in terms of profit. Obviously I'm not saying they need to make $1 billion or $2 billion every quarter, but comparatively to many other entertainment segments, comparative to many like game studios, Sony is not super profitable because they're selling you a relatively expensive piece of hardware for comparatively little. But this price increase, in my opinion, is way too much for nothing concrete against. So there's not even like a real like transaction going on. It's just a raw price increase. So PlayStation Plus Extra goes from $100 to $135. The euro price is actually not too bad. 26 euro, 100 British pounds, and 11,700 yen. And then the PlayStation Plus Premium, which is the subscription tier that I use, it's 160 US dollars. It's 152 euro. It's 120 British pounds. So I think that's once again a pretty decent pricing in terms of pounds in comparison to the rest, and 13,900 yen. I've always said that the difference between PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium price-wise is not that significant, and that pretty much everyone should consider getting Premium. Right now, I think in pounds I would still believe it, but in everything else, I mean, percentage-wise, it's not a bigger difference now. But just the fact that you're going now all the way up to over $150, $160, I think a lot of people will try to keep it to this subscription because this is now more than $10 per month. I think this is kind of like basically the pain line for many people. Like, am I paying $10 or more per month? And once we're talking about more, this is basically now the new Game Pass pricing, right? It's $11 per month basically. I don't think it's egregious in terms of the end price, but I think the way we got here is bad. What do I mean by that? Well, the price increase, as I've outlined, is from 60, 100, and from 120 to now 80, 135, and 160. Why am I really focusing on this? Well, the simple reason is that we are talking about a 35% increase. I think Sony could have really gotten away with making this $70, which would be the equivalent to one full price game. I think they could have made this $120, maybe $125. And they could have made this $140, which again, right, it would still be a price increase, but at least that would be a price increase sort of in line with a lot of inflation. I know that those original $60 prices and stuff came like even back from like the PlayStation 3 era, but like it's such a big one-time jump that this is, I think, is what creating the backlash. Again, it's not backlash that I'm personally jumping on board on for myself. I am pretty much in the clear. Like, I have like my subscription guaranteed for the next 3 years and 2 months. But I think this will like prevent many, like especially like younger people who go in to like get into PlayStation, and then they look at like the extra tier where they would get like Sony's older AAA games and stuff like that, and now this would be probably too expensive for many of them. $100 and $135 is kind of a big difference. This is why I've said that the euro and pound prices are not that bad, but the dollar price definitely hits hard. Silicon Magic, this makes Apple Arcade a real steal. Yeah, Apple Arcade, I don't know how many people will like agree with me here, but I absolutely love Apple Arcade, especially its family aspect. Now, I do have Apple One Premium, I think, the most expensive tier, right? The one with like 2 terabytes. I have that because I share a ton of like cloud storage with my family members. We all use like Apple Music, so it's an absolute no-brainer in this case. But like Apple Arcade is such a freaking good thing, right? Especially with how many kids and teens now play on their phones and tablets. To get like all those games without any ads, it's super convenient to manage. It's fully integrated with like, oh, your kid is downloading this. Do you want to allow this or not? And of course, you just get all the great stuff from iOS in general when it comes to like time management. So I love Apple Arcade. I use it daily for stuff like my backgammon games, and obviously like I try all of the bigger stuff that comes out on it, all the more graphically intensive stuff. So yeah, I think this, by the way, I have argued that like PlayStation Plus Premium and especially like Extra were better deals than Game Pass because I like the actual games on those services. I think this now puts Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate ahead once again. Just like the commitment to first party games day one, even though I'm not really in love with what Microsoft is delivering in terms of first party games. I think this puts Game Pass ahead. I think this is still a better service. I just don't think it's a better service for the money. But this is highly personal on my part. Alexander, you're saying, can you at some point talk about game streaming services? It's been some years since I've checked if they're viable. Well, I will be actually talking about those now because I will talk about them. The article is basically over, right? They are just pointing out that the new prices will remain a discounted rate when compared to purchasing the 1 month or 3 month subscription. For current 12-month subscribers, the price increase will not take effect. Blah, blah, blah. It all makes sense, basically. Until your next renewal date that occurs on or after November 6th. Minus November 11th, 2026. Game streaming. So what did I want to mention about game streaming? Well, I think there are hidden reasons here for why the prices are going up. And I've already said the most obvious thing is that, believe it or not, like it or not, whatever Microsoft is saying, like subscription services definitely are taking away from regular game sales revenue. Now, to me, that is perfectly fine. And as I've outlined, if we were talking about about a 15% price increase, I would actually be arguing based on inflation, based on just demands to build more servers and stuff, I'm fine with that. It's just I'm not fine with like just how severe the price increase is. But let's talk quickly about PlayStation Plus Premium. Now, PlayStation Plus Premium is the tier where you get we can, I think, like break this down here, right? Do they give you an explainer here? PS Plus. Oh, it's just news. Okay. Well, I mean, I know it from the top of my head, so it's not like I need an explainer on this. But like PlayStation Plus Premium gives you the monthly games from PlayStation Plus Essential, and of course, online multiplayer and stuff. Then it gives you it also gives you some of the all of the discounts that you also get like through PlayStation Plus. It's actually quite good. It's not as consistent as Game Pass that offers you like discounts on all games that are in Game Pass, but it also like it's just for random games across the store. You will sometimes get 10 or 15% discounts if you're a PS Plus subscriber. So those are basically the main benefits of PlayStation Plus Essential. Then with Extra, you get a large library of PS4 and PS5 games. Many of them are now from Sony's first party, so they're quite good, and I really recommend the Extra tier. But then PlayStation Plus Premium adds 2 or 3 new things here. One is trials, which is games over a certain price, and after like they've been on the market for 3 months, are basically forced by Sony to offer you at least like a 40-minute trial. Most offer you like 2 or sometimes even 3 hours. I loved it. I've tested out a ton of games this way, and the list keeps on growing and growing. Then they offer you the Classics back catalog, which is games from the PSP, the PS1. It also includes like remasters that were done for those games. So it's not just emulated stuff, it's also stuff that already came to like the PS4 or something, but it's obviously better than an emulated version. And the last stuff is game streaming. This is, by the way, why in some regions we have PlayStation Plus Premiums, and in other we have PlayStation Plus Deluxe, because some of those countries don't have game streaming, so they get like premium for a little cheaper, and then it's called Deluxe and it doesn't have streaming. Fatal Blaze, kind of bad time for this news, knowing your competitive is releasing Starfield day one on Game Pass. Yeah, this is why I've said, this is why I now once again would consider Game Pass a better deal than PS Plus Premium and Extra. I personally have been pretty outspoken that I'm not a big fan of a lot of what Microsoft is putting out, but obviously Starfield is a very, very big game, and it will have a lot of impact on the market. Quite honestly, I think Sony's more isolated from competing with Xbox than many people will admit, because Xbox just recently increased prices, even though they are getting like their butt kicked by PlayStation when it comes to like unit sales. I think subscription service money has actually been mostly flat. So this idea that Game Pass is like getting people to switch systems or to spend more money in general has been it's completely not true in the current market. It might at some point change, but if overall game like purchasing and even like spending money on hardware is like experiencing like still that uptick, especially powered by PlayStation 5 now that the Switch is ancient, paying for subscription services does not bring in as much money as many of those companies expected. So I think it's kind of reasonable that Sony wants to say, oh, most people didn't take like our subscriptions not too serious to begin with. People buy our system for the good hardware, for the great AAA games. Yeah, let us just get as much money from this as possible, because we know that people will still like need PlayStation Plus Essential, and we know that some enthusiasts, including myself, will likely keep paying for premium regardless. At least it's like below 180 or something, right? Then I would really start to reconsider. But let's talk about the last perk of PlayStation Plus Premium, which is game streaming. Now, game streaming currently is for the PS3, because there's no PS3 emulator on the PS4, PS5. It's for some PS4 games. It's actually not a bad collection. It's like many of the games that you find like in the PlayStation Plus Extra tier, you can stream through PlayStation Plus Premium. What it doesn't currently have is streaming for PS5 games. And Sony is working on Project Kronos. We have talked about this when I was talking about the PlayStation Portal. Project Kronos is PS5 game streaming for the PS5. Obviously, if you don't want to first download the game, you just stream it right away. I highly hope that Project Kronos PS5 streaming will work on the PlayStation Portal. I have said that I don't consider the PlayStation Portal like in any way an essential purchase, but I have said time and time again that if it does support PS5 streaming, and I don't mean like from your own console, but from the cloud, then I think it actually has some reason to exist. Not for me personally, I would just get like a super large Anker battery pack and just connect it to my phone, but I think for some people it would then have a reason to exist. Now, this extension of streaming from just PS3, PS4 to PS5 will cost money. And I think if this would have coincided with the launch of PlayStation Plus PS5 streaming, Sony could have justified this price increase somewhat. Now, it would have negatively reflected on why those prices are going up, but I think Premium would have really been in the clear if they said you now have PS5 streaming. Fetid Blaze, yeah, like you said, it's not going to switch people to buy an Xbox. It's going to consider people into getting into PC gaming. Exactly, Fetid Blaze. Not only are games like cheaper on Steam in general, but like you don't need an ongoing subscription service, which now costs more than a full price game. And even though it's more expensive to build like an equivalent PC to the PS5 hardware, but you also have the option to build game on a laptop. You have the option to build yourself a very premium PC, which won't be reached by a regular PS5 or Xbox Series X. And of course, you can use your PC for stuff outside of gaming, so that adds value. I mean, if energy costs are super cheap where you live, you can just let it like crypt mine for all I care, which I still don't encourage people to do for a ton of reasons, but it's still a much more versatile product. Now, it does necessitate purchase like a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, but again, you could be gaming on a laptop. I do my emulation stuff on my MacBook and I'm perfectly happy with it. But this is, by the way, why I'm also advocating for a PS5 Pro. I think Sony needs like the equivalent to the value of a PS5 in a higher tier. If a PS5 discless is like $400, and I would compare the discless version because PCs don't have physical media anymore, and the PS5 that has a disk drive will allow you to buy like used games, and those like change the value equation. So let's just compare the discless version, the digital edition. And I think what Sony is doing in the $400 space with the digital edition, they should bring to like the $550 space. So something like, I don't know who of you like follows PC hardware. Like AMD just launched the 7800 XT and the 7700 XT. I think if Sony launches a piece of hardware that delivers about as much performance as like either one, right? It depends, like there's only a $50 price difference between them, then I think Sony would have a great deal. It's like, oh, we deliver as much performance as a $500 graphics card with a $550 console, but that console also offers like a CPU, a controller included, all the extra bells and whistles basically. So I think Sony could get like really good market response from this. Alexander, I think a streaming service doesn't make much sense on a console. Optimize Sony Xperia with minimal latency, max resolution streaming on your TV with an affordable controller, and you have a winner. Well, it depends, right? Technologically, I agree that it sounds like a good thing, but as somebody who like tested a lot of xCloud, somebody who tested a lot of GeForce Now, right? You can play like free games over it very easily, so I don't even need like a big Steam library or anything for it. I have never been super happy with game streaming, and I actually have like really low latency internet where I live in Berlin. Here in Erfurt, where I'm visiting my mom, it's terrible. I like my internet speeds are decent, right? But the latency is not good. So game streaming by itself, I'm not actually saying that game streaming on the actual PS5 would be the main thing here, but I'm very much optimistic that Sony would finally open up their streaming stuff to like phones and laptops by the time they like or to phones in general. It is already on laptops. By the time they launch like Project Chronos, right? I'm not saying that it would be only meant for PlayStation, but because Sony does not have a full-on ecosystem, they would primarily advertise it with like the PS5 and then maybe eventually with like their own Sony phones, right? Faded Blaze, but it's also give Microsoft the advantage in the subscription market because Game Pass Ultimate works across the PC market. Yes, of course. I know that I'm not known as like much of a Microsoft lover. I very much subscribe to like the Steve Jobs belief that they don't really have taste. I think they've been a really, really bad management company for Xbox. I think Xbox should have been either independent or sold off to somebody else. I think Microsoft likes to throw around big money to help Xbox, but they don't really invest into the proper expertise to make the console actually successful. And this is all what has left. What has basically guided us to where we are now, which is where we now have PC Game Pass. We have day and date launches on PC, regardless of the optimization toll it takes on games, right? Regardless of the delays it forces, because I'm not saying Sony doesn't delay games, I'm not saying Nintendo doesn't delay games, but there definitely is more happening on that side from Microsoft, and you cannot tell me that especially like the Xbox Series S is not holding back some game development there. Just look at the entire chaos that was going on with Baldur's Gate. Oh, we have a new subscriber. A big thank you for that. Hope you can see the heart that I'm giving you right now. Hope it works. Sometimes it just doesn't get recognized. Again, I don't have an extra monitor to actually monitor OBS. I just see my stream on my iPad with all the delays that it entails, unfortunately. So yeah, again, I do understand the pros of Game Pass, especially if you are a PC user, especially if you are like a PC and Xbox user. I personally don't see any point in having both an Xbox and a PC. I would at that point just build a more expensive PC, but yeah, to me the PlayStation is still the best console, especially with like the recent deals that Sony has been offering on it. It's like undercutting Xbox by now almost $100 here in Europe, like the Xbox Series X. So yeah. But the subscriptions, as I said, if they had gone up by 10-15%, I would be far more understanding. What? Okay, Alexander. I'm not reading what you said, but have much fun. By the way, a small recommendation for anybody who really likes cola. If you want to, like, didn't do it this time, but maybe I should do it for my streams in the future for like better. For just more fun, there's an Italian drink called limoncello. It's like a lemon based like alcohol basically. It mixes really really well. You just take a few sips from the regular cola and then you put the rest in with the limoncello. It's delicious. um yeah Silicon Magic, are you talking about the Xbox? About it being more comfortable and more silent? Like, do you mean that it's like a reason to get like an Xbox over a PC? Because you can make a PC as small as you and silent as you want these days. If you build like your own tower, especially like if you get something with the latest NVIDIA 40 series, you get like 40-50% higher efficiency from those parts than from the latest consoles, which are on 7 or 6 nanometers. So I don't think that point really stands. It's more comfortable. I agree with that in general. However, I would say that with like Steam Big Picture mode, I think most people just haven't bothered to set up PCs in a way that like makes them truly like compete in terms of experience with a console. But I think it's very much possible. Yeah, the buying experience is definitely easier, especially for kids and stuff like that. So I will not disagree with that. But I'm like a Mac user who like likes building PCs and shit. So I'm very much in a different territory from an Xbox user. Faded Blaze, they're not about consoles anymore. Microsoft is promoting consumer choice, but I do agree with you saying there is no purpose of owning both. So you see, we do have actually some disagreement here between Silicon and Faded Blaze. Faded Blaze, I will call you out on one thing, which is Microsoft is about consumer choice. That's an interesting phrasing that is one-to-one copied from like Microsoft's PR department. But the reason why I usually disagree with this is Microsoft is about consumer choice because consumers are not choosing their console. The Xbox Series is now selling worse than the Xbox One did when you align the time for how much it has been on the market. So, Microsoft's choice was to offer you more choice because people were not choosing their console. Like the reason why Nintendo and PlayStation are not doing that. By the way, PlayStation is putting their games on PC, just not day one, and therefore their games often come out better optimized and actually more high end on PC than Microsoft's games. Just look at like how much hardware and box and Gamers Nexus are using games like Spider-Man, especially when Spider-Man launched like with DLSS 3 and like even better ray tracing than on console. So it's not like Sony's like holding off experiences from PC. They just brought like freaking Ratchet and Clank, which was a showpiece for the PlayStation 5 hardware and the new SSD tag to PC. So I just think that day and date is not as much pro-choice, if you want to use that terminology. I know it means something very different, as some people make it out to be. It's just Microsoft was completely forced into that position. They would be like, Xbox by itself would be completely bankrupt by this point if it weren't for Microsoft's financial support. But beyond that, I just don't think that any company would see much potential in Xbox by itself if it wasn't trying to appeal to PC users at this point. This is very different from how Nintendo and Sony are seen. With Sony, investors are like looking at PC for some extra revenue, while with Nintendo, people don't want it to be on PC because they know that it would fully cannibalize like their hardware sales. I know a lot of people try to say like that PC does not like take away from console sales if games are there day one. For one, I think the Xbox is now disproving that, because I think the Xbox Series generation is far better hardware wise than the Xbox One generation. So the fact that it's selling worse than that kind of tells me that PC is definitely taking away some sales, but also Nintendo is like doing very cheap, sometimes older hardware, which if you were to compare it to like a PC, even like a basic laptop, people would just not see the same need to buy a Nintendo console unless Nintendo made it like really dirt cheap. But you could get like a Steam Deck, and imagine what the Steam Deck could do with the same games that are on the Switch if those games were like optimized for the system. We are not talking about emulation, but the actual, like x86 games, DirectX 12, stuff like that. It would run far better on there and for not much more money. Silicon Magic. I like to have my PC on the desk and my console on the TV. Yeah, that is basically how I manage it, except for the fact that I don't have like a regular PC. I have like a laptop that I still like do some gaming on. And if I ever decide to like build myself a PC, I would definitely keep it as a desk thing. But if somebody just wants something for gaming, you can make it work through a TV nowadays. Faded Blaze, answer me this PlayStation Portal, why? But then when I can get their backbone and use remote play on any device with Bluetooth. I have said in my last stream that I don't think that for most people PlayStation, like my last PlayStation stream, that PlayStation Portal makes a lot of sense for most people. The point that I make about PlayStation Portal first would be the convenience factor of a separate device with full-on dual sense capabilities, right? So I will just put it as one point, even though I kind of worded it as two, right? Full dual sense capabilities is not something that you can get with the backbone, so that's definitely part of it. Second of all, I don't know why I'm counting from this finger to this finger, but bear with me. Second of all, because it's more on the same Wi-Fi network, it does not actually work over Wi-Fi. On the same Wi-Fi network, this is something that I've actually found out post-stream, is it basically works directly peer-to-peer with your PC, with your PlayStation. So if you want to play like your PlayStation 5 on your toilet or while somebody else is watching something, it will not actually take away like internet bandwidth. It will not be like a bad experience like potentially it regularly is, but it will like work perfectly between those devices, which is a big plus in terms of latency, image quality, and stuff like that. The third point is it's integrated with the whole like PlayStation experience stuff in terms of that when you like turn it on, it turns on your PS5. If you go to the through the actual app that I have for myself as well on my iPhone, you have to first get into the app, then you have to click on your PS5, then it takes a while to boot up. From everything that I've seen, that is wildly improved on this model, with this kind of experience. Again, it's not a killer feature by itself, but once you start combining it with everything else. And of course, yes, Bluetooth stuff is another problem, though Bluetooth would be very high latency. I have tried like PS5 like streaming from my console to my phone and using my AirPods. I honestly cannot recommend it. You get like the latency from the streaming, and then you get like the traditional relatively high latency from regular Bluetooth. That is not an optimal gaming experience. So those are the pro arguments. However, the counter arguments obviously are it's expensive, it eats up too much extra space, potentially in your backpack, it has no intrinsic functionality besides accepting a stream for your PS5, so it's not even like a full-on Android tablet, it has no cellular stuff, so it would need to rely on your personal hotspot. We don't yet know the battery life, it's not an OLED screen. On OLED screen would actually help with some latency issues. So yeah, there are plenty of counterpoints, but again, I always say this, it is what it is. Guys, I'm so sorry I'm sweating. It's like I closed all the windows because it's pretty like loud outside, and it's for some reason got like really hot and humid inside. I apologize. And I didn't want to like turn on the fan blowing at me again, because at some point I'm certain I will get sick from it because it's now much cooler than it was the last couple of streams. I mean, we can briefly like go back to what they've announced in general, right? On the PS blog here. By the way, like, I just want to give a small shout out to the PSVR 2. I love PSVR 2. Unfortunately, my eyes get tired a tad too quickly. I should probably like get my eyes checked and get like then appropriate lenses into the system. It's not the system's fault. I've had like some worsening eyesight in over the years. It just has never been bad enough for me to warrant to get glasses. But I definitely do get tired in something like the system. And you now get like Drums Rock Undertale DLC available today on PSVR 2. So there's so much fun stuff coming to PSVR 2. I highly recommend, I'm so sorry, if you have a PS5, to get a PSVR 2. And another small like a small recommendation here is Sea Smash VRS. I love this game, but it had relatively little content by the time it came out. And now it's adding like an infinity mode, which is what it always needed. Co-op, which okay, I don't actually have that many like PS5 gamer friends, and certainly not PSVR 2 gamer friends, but it gets like an all versus bot, which sounds fun, new levels and stage selection, new blocks, which if you know the game, like different blocks act differently, so that would like create new fun gameplay elements. More sharing stuff, which is always fun, and it's all coming for free on September 14th. So big shout out to like how PSVR 2 is going. Faded Blaze, I'm not trying to come off as a fanboy or other company. It's just that I'm talking as a consumer, knowing about the cost of living. Oh, Faded Blaze, I'm not calling you out in any way. If you're asking me if I think you should buy a PlayStation Portal, my like knee-jerk response is no. I most likely won't be buying a PlayStation Portal. Like, look, I invest a ton of money into my technology, and the big thanks to my mom and my smaller job and stuff like that, and me hoping to like get back a lot of those that money once I start working as a doctor and stuff like that. But I by no means recommend people to just start throwing money out the window. No, I'm trying to give you pros and cons, and then the ultimate conclusion will be up to you. This is how I've tried to say that if it was a 15% increase on the subscription services, I would now be sitting here and saying, yeah, with inflation, all those year-long changes, with the soon upcoming like Project Kronos, they could have done a lot to justify it. They could have promised, like I've said that in the beginning of the stream, but I don't believe that Sony should be doing the equivalent to Game Pass, which is day and date launches into the subscription service. But I think what Sony should do is they should have a commitment to have their AAA games come onto PS Plus Extra, let's say after a year or maybe 18 months or something like that. Hell, they could say like 24 months if they really wanted to hold off. But I think that could have justified a price increase for PS Plus Extra. And then for PS Plus, they could have said, we will now be doubling like discount promotion stuff, right? For example, this is something that is very attractive on PS Plus, and you can get like it's 35, sometimes even 70% off if you're a PS Plus member. So Sony will like double down on discounts for PS Plus users. Alexander, you're saying, please talk more about PSVR 2 and VR in general, standalone VR, Quest 3. Well, I will not be talking much about Quest 3 because I really dislike Meta as a company, Facebook. I don't think that any of us should be giving them a substantial amount of money. I think that their contribution to society is mostly negative, and you guys know that I'm not a moralist on those issues. Like, I have my problems with laissez-faire neoliberal capitalism. That's another discussion for a very different kind of setting, but I am perfectly fine with I am perfectly fine with buying stuff from companies that have some moral issue, right? A little bit of greed here, a little bit of, we don't know, like, how we treat employees there, right? I always encourage companies to do better, but I will not curb my own consumption right out of the gate, because for one, I don't believe there is super ethical consumption under neoliberalism, capitalism anyway, so it's really hard to find any company to support, and I'm not buying shit like the Fairphone. Yeah, like, Quest is one thing. I will be, though, talking about VR in general more, because it's very interesting to me now, and I will be obviously talking also about it in the context of like Vision Pro and stuff like that. Fated Blaze, it's just that I never had these issues with Sony when Sean Layden was head. I just don't trust Jim Ryan. I don't think, like, Sony was very different under Sean Layden. I think people misunderstand why it was so different, though. Like, the PlayStation 3 generation was, for one, if you want to talk about pricing, remember the starting price of the PlayStation 3. That was egregious. But the way they built it and everything that was coming together, the way they designed like the main processor and stuff, it made it super expensive. And of course they couldn't, like, they already were like losing hundreds of dollars per sale, but they couldn't make it even cheaper, right? But that was bad management and bad pricing in the end. As a consumer, I don't care what went wrong. I just care that my PlayStation suddenly is like more expensive 15 years ago than it is now, and I don't even mean adjusted for inflation. That was a $600 console. You also have to understand that then the PS3 tanked, right? And especially in comparison to the first year sales of the Xbox 360. So what Sony needed to do, they really needed to double down on like first party development. They needed to give you a cheaper console. But this has everything to do with like corporate thinking. People who try to blame like decisions on one person don't quite understand how big companies work. Big companies, also, by the way, Sean Layden launched like, by the way, if you are comparing like problems like the PlayStation Portal to Sean Layden, under Sean Layden the the PlayStation Vita died, and like all of their attempts with like streaming in those days were very, very unfinished, very, very much like decent for their time, but by no means anything they should have made available to consumers in that state. So it's not like Jim Ryan is the one that is like killing a ton of projects out there. In fact, that Jim Ryan committed to a second generation of PSVR 2 is kind of a big surprise to me. Elentra, by the way, a big welcome to the stream. I know I haven't seen your name yet here. I'm pretty sure they're upping the price due to the PS Portal failing when it's released. No, they're not. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. They can just not produce the PlayStation Portal. If it stops selling, it will not impact their revenue substantially. So, like, they can write off losses for anybody who doesn't know. If it really doesn't sell, they can just basically like say, okay, this amount that we have in the warehouse, it's basically destroyed, and we are writing that off now for tax purposes. Alexander, well, I agree absolutely wholeheartedly about Meta, but the original Quest and Quest 2 were a big factor in people trying and using VR. Talk about Pico VR if you want. I actually have a friend who has Pico VR, so I could ask him about that. That's absolutely true. I'm sure they'll get something similar quickly. Yeah, I believe, like, doesn't it use like very similar like games in general to the Meta? I do not support Meta, and I completely agree with you. You see, guys, this is why I like being a little more wordy, like really really explaining why I believe stuff, because I think that even if you end up disagreeing with me, I think just in general people are much happier to know why I do certain things, why I defend certain things, why I attack certain things. I have no idea why I'm lisping today. My mouth isn't even that dry. I'm just lisping for some reason. Very, very sorry for that. And I like to explain this stuff, and then we can actually find some stuff. And then I will sometimes just be completely disagree with you, just like I did with Elantra. Like, because I don't think that all things are connected. Like, just because one thing happened doesn't mean that the next thing happened because of the prior thing. Like, the accessories exist in basically a different world for Sony. I think that the PlayStation 5 and subscriptions are very much connected. I think like stuff like the DualSense and the PSVR 2 are very much connected to those, but everything else, like the accessories, the audio stuff that isn't Sony directly, and especially stuff now like the PlayStation Portal, I just don't think they look at it in the context of like everything else, because they can just say, oh, this wasn't a success, but look at how successful our regular PS5 is. I think probably the number one contributor to why the price increase is happening, for one, don't forget how long those prices have basically kept steady. So when you actually like consider the inflation since like the PS3 era, it's not actually unfair. It's just that I don't think that because they now can address a wider market, that makes the price increase less valid. I think they should have kept it to like a 10 or 15% increase, similar to how they did a 15% increase from $60 to $70. I think similar to this, the $60 PS Plus Essential annual price should have gone to $70. I think that would have been actually really easy to explain to people. It's now the price of one AAA purchase. I don't think many people would have disagreed with that. But yeah, I will be talking more, Alexander, about PSVR 2 and my experience with it, and how I obviously, based on that, whether I might consider a Vision Pro or something like that. So yeah, but by the way, I wanted to call this out, that the double discounts for anybody who like knows, like with PS Plus, if you even have like Essential, not even Extra or Premium, you can actually get some pretty good deals here. But yeah, so I've called out VR2, I've called out the discounts, so let's very quickly go back to like the PlayStation Portal and obviously the stuff that I've already covered, because I actually think in this, it's not contextually interesting to what we've just discussed. I think it's just still interesting. Faded Blaze, you've like asked me like what the reason for buying this is. I think just if you look at it, it's like interesting, right? So if you have like any kind of problem paying for like housing or food, education, medical bills and stuff like that, no, please don't get this. It's like $200 that you definitely don't need to pay if you have a PS5. However, there is a chance that if this does work with PlayStation 5 streaming, right, with Project Chronos that I've discussed, which again is not official from Sony, but it's basically like confirmed. It's like has been like talked about by Tom Henderson and like other good leakers, so I'm actually very much believing it. Also, it's like such a wide installation to be having like PS5 streaming. I kind of don't think that they're able to hide it. Yeah, so it's $200, which actually is not that bad now when you consider what a year of their subscription services now costs like, and you get like the full DualSense stuff, you get like an 8-inch tablet there, and you get all the PlayStation Link stuff that is like better than Bluetooth. Hi, Mom. It's okay. I don't need to hide that. My mom just came home from work. As I've said, I'm staying here for the holidays, so this is partially why this is my streaming setup and not the one people are used to from my Berlin home. So yeah, I think I think Sony's an interesting phase. This is why I wanted to go back to this. It's because Sony is trying to outgrow being just a PlayStation company, and I don't mean like Sony as like the company that also does like image sensors and movies and stuff like that, but I really mean like Sony PlayStation, like the subdivision. This is, by the way, why I think not too long ago those would have just been like Sony earbuds. Yeah, I will say hi to her later on. I think not too long ago those would just be like regular Sony earbuds with like some marketed PlayStation functionality, but now it's in-house, right, like under the PlayStation subdivision. This is why I'm trying to make people think differently of PlayStation these days, because PlayStation is trying to grow into sort of its own ecosystem. It's hard to do that with a console. It's hard, like, look at how difficult it is even for Microsoft across PC and Xbox, because on PC people favor Steam over the freaking Microsoft store. People on PC definitely are not very much in love with streaming. And people are not even that much in love with subscription services, because on PC regularly games are very, very heavily discounted. So why would you pay like $15 or now it's like $17 or $18 a month if you could just pay like once $40 for the game and keep it in perpetuity? Some PC gamers play like one game for forever, and sure, some of those games will cost you money forever, like World of Warcraft, but then there are free games across all systems, like your Fortnites, your Genshin Impacts, and then of course there are like your PC only games like League of Legends. So I fully understand why PC users would not want to be a natural part of the Xbox ecosystem. They consider their own ecosystem superior to consoles. And this is difficult for Sony because, for one, Sony does not want to port PS5 games for free to PC, so they want to double dip there. And it's not technically double dipping because not everybody buying the PC version of a Sony first party game will also buy it on PS5. But if I were to like potentially like switch to a PC from a PS5, I would need to repurchase those games if I still wanted to keep playing them there. So this is why I'm trying to contextualize here. Sony wants the extra revenue, the extra profit. They're still keeping like their devices pretty low margin. They're not 40% margins like Apple, and their subscription services are not 80 or 70% margins like Microsoft is. And I don't mean like Game Pass. Game Pass, I don't even know if it's truly profitable. Phil like said that once without any consideration for all the purchasing that Microsoft is doing, for all the expanding of the studios and stuff like that. But whatever. I don't trust Phil. Like I know people like call out Jim Ryan for a lot of shit, and Jim Ryan is kind of Tim Cookish in the way that obviously he likes money and he will not be afraid to do like inflation adjustment or just like price increases when he thinks the product is good enough, which by the way, that is also still like decided mostly by the board. He just signs off on it. It's not Jim Ryan unilaterally making those decisions. It's not Tim Cook unilaterally doing those decisions. People who are saying that have no idea how multi-billion, or in Apple's case like multi-trillion dollar companies work. So yeah, I really wanted to like go back to this, not in much detail, right? But like the PlayStation Portal is so interesting because there is some tech here that I genuinely consider interesting, like all of the PlayStation linked stuff. But obviously it sucks for people who just want to connect Bluetooth accessories to it. I think the overall form factor is nice, and I think they've actually integrated like the DualSense really well into it. And the audio accessories they're making available with it are quite compelling to me. It's just that because PlayStation Portal is not that compelling, and I already have like my AirPods and stuff, those would literally be just stuff that I used for like my PlayStation. And as I've said, one thing that Sony could actually make it more attractive about this device is they currently like connect to the PS5 through like a USB dongle. A PlayStation 5 Slim could potentially come out and have native integration with PlayStation PlayStation Link. So I think that would actually be really, really superior in terms of experience, especially because also the PS5 Slim, I know it's not going to be called the Slim, I just colloquially call it the Slim, will have like 2 USB-C ports. It will not even have a USB-A port for that kind of dongle on the front. It will still have one in the back, but I don't think that Sony like wants people to do that, like go through the back to connect like a wireless dongle. So I do believe that it might actually be a big deal for PlayStation Slim to offer that. And that obviously flows similar to how Apple has like AirPlay and stuff into the ecosystem experience. And I very much welcome that Sony is trying to do that. I will call them out when they're like weird about it, like the PlayStation Portal, and I will call them out when they're a little too greedy about it, like with the new PlayStation Plus pricing, right? So I will try to stay nuanced here, but overall I will also be very, very positive whenever they do stuff like PSVR 2, which again, like people try to like just equate like the consoles. There is no equivalent to PSVR 2 on the Xbox, and it's even hard to sometimes find good AAA games on PC VR these days. Like No Man's Sky is like really, really well optimized for PSVR 2. Firewall Ultra is like launching, which is like what a lot of people have been like waiting for. There's like all tons of horror and adventure games. So Synapse, high recommendation for Synapse. My eyes for some reason get like really tired in this game, but it is a good game. It is a good game. C-Smash VRS, which I can play for hours. Obviously Beat Saber was like optimized for PSVR 2. Also high recommendation for the Queen Music Pack here. And of course you get like classics like RE4 will get like a VR mode for free, and you also have like a VR mode for Resident Evil Village. So yeah, Alexander, I will talk about all that stuff. And of course you go back to stuff that it launched with, like GT7 and Horizon Call of the Mountain, which again, Call of the Mountain I still haven't finished. I just have never found the time for it, but it is still a good game. And now my cat is going crazy. I think it's time for me to start wrapping up. So yeah, I know this was, for one, this isn't like my longest stream or anything. It's like, it will come down to about 1.5 hours or something. Which, again, like, I really try to, like, I probably wasn't as outraged as maybe some would have expected from like my thumbnail. For one reason, I did look up until when my own PlayStation subscription service is running, and then I saw that it's like running until late 2026. So, but for regular people, I think that Sony is going too high too quickly. I think they could have made like a $70 price right now and then an $80 price maybe 2 years from now or something. My point to this is I believe that we will keep this pricing for years and years. Like, just remember how long we've like kept the $60 price. So I think we're keeping this pricing for like the next decade, unless we see like a giant new inflation rate or something in the meantime. As I've said, there would have been things that I think Sony could have done here. They could have like committed to like constant discount offers for PS Plus Essential. They could have committed to guaranteed releases for their first party games for PlayStation Plus X. They should have launched Project Chronos alongside that price increase to make it far more like palatable. Alexander, Xbox should be using PC VR in a way, and streaming VR on a dumb device should be funny that a few years in tech count for the future. Yeah, that the last one is true, but no, you cannot stream VR. VR has to be extremely low latency. Like, this is, by the way, why I don't even like LCD panels in VR. I think all VR should be like OLED, micro OLED, or micro LED. But the other point is you just need that wired connection for it, or it needs to run locally on like your standalone VR headset. However, there definitely they could make it like work with some mixed reality headsets that are available on PC. Like Microsoft, like really tried pushing those, not in terms of the Xbox, but in terms of PC in general. And I think they kind of failed with that. Like they've had like stuff from Asus and all the traditional companies, and none of it really panned out. Like, Bella, you can chill. My cat is like running at full speed against the wall for some reason. um, so yeah, I will be talking more about VR. I will be talking more about game streaming, especially when Project Chronos comes around. From what I understand, it will be launching in Germany pretty much day one, so that should offer me a good opportunity to test it out. And as always, I will keep you updated on like my latest impressions on like recent AAA games, PlayStation hardware, changes in PlayStation software and services, stuff like that. So I'm very, very glad that we actually had a decent amount of people watching and commenting. Apparently, PlayStation has actually become kind of an integral part of my channel. I'm very, very happy that it's not just an Apple channel, that it's certainly not just a drama channel. And I appreciate all of you who come here. I apologize for like looking more at my iPad this stream than I usually do, but that's because I was really like, my eyes are tired and I really need to concentrate to see my stream. Usually I can just like look a little to the side and catch it, but not today. Yeah, so that was basically it. I hope you guys learned what is going on. I hope you made your own mind up about it based on the input that I gave. I hope some of you agree, some disagree, but like in really good faith, just like in terms of a good argument that you might have with me. And just in future in general, I will try to give you my impressions on anything that might be new and exciting, as I did right now with PSVR 2 and stuff, because this is what I think live streams are for. Whenever there's a new interesting topic, I will talk about that topic, and then I will add something interesting that might be related to it. So I don't even know how I will like structure this video. Maybe I'll just do it without any timestamps. It's just all been so back and forth. But yeah, I'm really glad that we can share this experience together. Alexander, I do agree. Then I remember downloading 2 kilobits compared to 70 mbits now. Yeah, that definitely has improved. And Thunderbolt and cloud computing getting more efficient, bigger bandwidths, etc. Well, yeah, it depends on what cloud gaming you are going for, right? GeForce Now is like testing a 240 FPS stream thing. Maybe that could start working, but that would be like ridiculously expensive to actually make happen, like really sustainably. Like Nvidia is probably the only company next to AMD, but AMD does not seem to have the same server expertise that can make this happen. And that obviously Sony might, but why would they, right? They want to sell you a PS5, they want to sell you a PSVR 2. They're not really interested in selling you a PSVR 2 that you then plug in into your laptop and then you stream like the image from a cloud PS5. It requires just unnecessary engineering expenditures that I don't think Sony is in the mood for. It may seem impossible right now, but I think this is inevitable in 5 to 10 years. Well, I will be following all tech in the next 5 or 10 years anyway, so we will be probably talking about this. Hopefully you will still be here watching my channel. Hopefully I will still have time on my in my life to be running this channel. Definitely less so than I have now, but maybe to an extent, maybe like a weekly podcast or something. So thank you all. I'm lisping, so I will be shutting this down because nothing against people with a lisp. I know it can be really hard, and a lot of you do amazing job like training to ignore it, but I obviously I don't lisp, so I don't like the sound of me lisping. Yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for making the chat lively. Thank you for subscribing, for commenting, for sharing my stream. The channel has grown a lot in the last 3 weeks. I hope that it will keep growing, especially with like the iPhone event not too far off. So thank you all for that. I'll see you guys next time. This is Mark Tech tuning out.